Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Laid Off Legends podcast, where we come together to listen to layoff stories and relevant expertise with a focus on finding inspiration, encouragement, and guidance for the laid off tech community and beyond. I'm your host, Leo, a former Microsoft principal PM that was laid off last October. Today, we're boldly going into some topics that are sensitive, but very relevant to our audience today. Do you know the subtle warning signs that a family member may be edging towards a serious mental health crisis? How confident are you in recognizing when grief, anxiety, or depression has really crossed the line into something that needs professional help? We're going to get answers to those questions and more from our special guest today, Dr. Paula McCall. Welcome to the Laid Off Legends podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Dr. McCall is a licensed psychologist in Arizona and is a nationally certified school psychologist with a PhD in educational psychology from Arizona State University, whose career spans preschool through high school and into clinical practice. Her passion is in equipping children, teens, and young adults to overcome trauma, manage anxiety and depression, and unlock their full potential through targeted assessments and interactive cognitive behavioral therapy. She also founded an organization called the Semicolon Society, whose mission is to provide free mental health education to the community with an emphasis on suicide prevention and support. By providing discussions and resources about mental health, the Semicolon Society seeks to reduce the stigma in having critical conversations, increase awareness and understanding of mental health challenges, and reduce suicide in our communities. She's also an award-winning clinician certified as a clinical trauma professional and has presented nationally on topics from grief interventions to depression in adolescents with intellectual disabilities. Dr. McCall also spearheads suicide risk assessment protocols in school districts, consults with families and educators, and has earned the Arizona Psychological Association's Distinguished Contribution Award for her outstanding impact. Dr. McCall, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Before we jump in, I want to say thank you. When we connected earlier, I was super nervous about this conversation. This is a very sensitive subject, and I was worried whether we should actually talk about this. And you really put me at ease in terms of reducing the stigma of talking about extreme mental health crises and how we can actually present this to our audience. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Our fears of talking about it just further contributes to the stigma. So we've got to break through those barriers and just do it and see it as a form of empowerment and an opening conversation.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your work in suicide prevention and mental health?
I mean, I've been really passionate in the area of suicide prevention for a long time, a long time now. I myself was a suicidal teenager, and that's an era of my life that seems so long ago and yet not so long ago in so many ways. And what I found is that as I started working in schools, and especially when I started working as a school psychologist, we were surrounded by youth who were having suicidal ideation, and we even had some suicide losses in our communities during that time. And I found that I reconnected with my old self in some sense in recognizing that, our youth need more. They need an opportunity, they need recognition, they need some supports. And so I started building in that path and really delving into what it is that we're missing societally, not just for our youth, but for overall. So it's really led me on this passion journey of identifying, what it is that we are missing in our schools, in our community, as parents, as educators, just as community members, and how we're supporting each other. I really started working in the community more and more, and then ultimately founded Semicolon Society to make it into a much broader effort that really encompasses so much more than what I was able to do as one person.
And what was the background behind the name Semicolon Society?
It's actually interesting you ask that because today is World Semicolon Day. The semicolon has become embraced worldwide as a symbol of moving forward. In grammar, the semicolon continues rather than ends a sentence. And so people have embraced the semicolon as a symbol of continuing on, continuing your story, continuing movement forward. So you'll see people with semicolon tattoos, jewelry, things like that. And it's really become this idea of how do I continue on? What is my story? What is my next step? And also in remembering people who we've lost, who we're still trying to continue their stories onward as well. So Semicolon Society was named in response to that movement.
Now, your experience talks a lot about children, schools, young adults. Is there a connection between what you do with the larger adult community and folks that are professionals in society today?
Absolutely. I started delving into things. I was really focused on youth. And then I started realizing how much parents don't know. They don't know what you don't know, and trying to work on education and connection with parents. And then that became broader, especially in the pandemic, into the whole community. Like as a community, we need to better understand. So as far as our efforts as a nonprofit and what we're doing is really about, there's no profile of suicide. There's no profile of mental wellness and mental health challenges. It encompasses everyone of every background and of all experiences and across all ages. So when we're out there trying to talk with the community, we're talking to all ages. We're talking to people about their children, about their friends, about their spouses, about their parents, that really this is a topic that touches everyone.
And speaking of touching everyone, there's a quote that says, doctors make the worst patients. For folks who, consider themselves educated, experienced, world traveled, etc., is there a different perspective that they should be embracing? Is this something that everybody should be listening to?
I think absolutely everybody should be listening to it. What we know about suicide is that it touches everyone of all backgrounds. And what we've seen in some of our celebrity losses is that sometimes even the most educated, the most what we would call successful people, the people with high levels of money and stardom and fanfare, still die by suicide. It does not discriminate. And in fact, people who are highly skilled, highly trained, maybe at the top of their field in certain areas, are sometimes it's most isolating. Sometimes being on the top of the mountain is as lonely as being anywhere else. So we have to definitely recognize that there's really nothing that serves as that protective barrier that's going to protect me from ever feeling like I'm struggling.
One of the qualities that you just described there is something that our audience is very familiar with. When you're laid off, there is a sense of isolation, shame, a sense of loneliness. You don't hear from the folks you used to hear from. You don't hear from a lot of the people you used to work with. And in many ways, and many times, we've heard a lot from our audience. They're also embarrassed to talk about it. And so this can be a very isolating experience. And then especially as we move into, some of the more dangerous parts of mental health, it can get into these areas that you're talking about. How do folks start to think about the threats of loneliness and isolation when it comes to these types of topics?
It's just so important, I think, to recognize the impact that loneliness has. Our U.S. Surgeon General has coined us as being in an epidemic of loneliness, that we have for well before the pandemic, that we were showing more societal fragmentation and isolation than in the past. And there's lots of different reasons that we could go into about why and why that is and isn't. The thing is that people are not connecting as much and to the same degree that they used to. And so then absolutely when you have fact being laid off and now you no longer have that support network that might have been in your work environment. When people don't know what to say and people are awkward and people always worry about, I'm going to say the wrong thing and make them feel bad. And so then you get isolated and no one says anything to you at all. These are really, really powerful pieces. Connection is one of the biggest resiliency pieces that we can have. One of the biggest things that we can to build our own resiliencies, to feel connected with people and to find the people that we feel connected with. Isolation and loneliness is one of the biggest challenges in our mental wellness for sure.
Are there any other misconceptions about suicide that you think are important to mention?
I think people are hesitant to have the conversation. And I think we have to reframe what talking about suicide really is. A lot of our messaging out there right now among media and so on is that if you're struggling, ask for help. And there's nothing wrong with that message. The thing is that a lot of times people who are struggling with suicidal ideation already feel like a burden to the people that they care about most. So they're not likely to just go up and say, hey, I'm feeling this way. Now I want to have a conversation, because they're already reached a point where they feel like a burden and they feel isolated and disconnected, and perhaps that they don't have a lot of worth or that they don't matter much. So I like to frame this whole concept of having conversations about suicide is empowering, that it's giving us the opportunity to recognize in the people that we care about, the people that we love, our family, our friends, our neighbors, our children, our parents, that recognizing that there's someone is struggling, learning how to reach out to them and how to connect with them and to be there, be present with them at one of their darkest points to help them move forward and find the connections and supports that they need. And that is incredibly empowering. I think that's something that we really need to do. We talk about fight the stigma, bring down the stigma, but yet people are still afraid to talk about it. We need to just look at shedding some of that and being authentic to who we are in our experiences. It's interesting because every time Semicolon Society is out at an event, we have so many people come up to us and share their personal stories of loss or challenge or suicidal thoughts or struggles. Everyone has them. Everyone has a story story to share, yet we hold ourselves back thinking that no one else knows what that is. And the more that we talk, the more we're going to shed that stigma.
I'm hearing two things. One is the community that's around this person watching and saying, I want to understand more. I'm listening. I'm here. And then the other is the person going through these feelings and how they can approach that and ask for help. What are some of the signs that people may manifest or show that others need to be aware of around them? So if they see these things, they start to take action. What does this look like?
So there's a number of different signs, but some of the things to really pay attention to are hopelessness. So that sense of I'm struggling, will things get better? Can I envision that something might get better? Can I believe that something might happen and something might change? I think that speaks a lot to the laid off piece, right? In that sense of, isolation and concern and stress and everything. Do I feel like something could happen? Or do I have an avenue that I might pursue that I feel hopeful about? Hopelessness is one of the biggest predictors of suicide. Paired with that is also a sense of being a burden, is feeling that I create more problems and stress to the people I most care about. And when you combine those together, when you have that sense of I create problems to the people I care about, and I don't feel hopeful that things are going to get any better, you see where that leads you on a direct trajectory. Another key piece is marked changes, noticeable changes. And when do you know? We have to follow our gut. We know the people that we love and that we care about. And if our gut is telling us that something is off or something is different, then we need to not pretend and talk it away, that we need to address it. And mark changes in behavior, in goal orientation, in social interactions, in engaging in things of interest or hobbies or activities, and even a marked notice, a sudden huge increase, improvement. What we do know too is that sometimes people who are really struggling and having a really hard time, when they decide to die, sometimes it's like the clouds lift and suddenly they act all relieved and okay, like they're all better suddenly again. That's also a notable change, a marked change in behavior that we need to pay attention to, because it could be indication that someone who has decided to die. So those are some of the key pieces.
And when someone observes these signs, what's the gentlest way to approach this in a way that's safe and healthy?
Well, so first I want to eliminate any myth that's still out there that talking about suicide increases suicidal thoughts, because it's absolutely debunked and disproven. That in fact, by opening up a conversation to someone who is struggling, it shows that we care and that we're concerned enough to have that conversation, and is more likely to increase a feeling of support and a positive feeling than to elicit any sort of negative feeling. And on the flip side of that, talking to someone who is not suicidal but who we're concerned about, and we say, are you having thoughts of suicide? And they say, well, no, I'm not. I'm just having a really hard day. They're not more likely to be suicidal either. Like, that's not going to change their mind and change their direction. They're probably going to be appreciative. Wow, you were really concerned about me. I really appreciate that. This is actually what's going on with me. So talking about suicide absolutely does not contribute to suicidal thoughts themselves. In fact, it can improve the feelings of support. Now, the way to go about doing that is to not beat around the bush. It's to be direct. And one of the best ways is to just go up to that person and directly address the things that you're noticing without judgment, without negativity, just stating forward. I've noticed these things that are different. Or I've noticed that, you've been talking more negative lately. Or I noticed that it seems like you feel kind of hopeless right now. Or I noticed there's a lot of other different warning signs, giving away items to loved ones, high periods of depression, irritability, engaging in a lot of impulsive activities, those kinds of, again, a lot of these are shifts, changes, right, that we're noticing. So again, I noticed. So we offer notice and then we offer support. Say, and I'm here for you. And I love you. I care about you. I'm here for you. How can I help? What can I do? How can I support you? And it's okay to ask the questions like, hey, are you feeling depressed? Are you having suicidal thoughts? And sometimes in situations, say someone's been laid off and they're really struggling, that that it's okay to approach that also directly and say, I've noticed that you seem to be really struggling. And I know you've had all these things going on in your life and things are feeling really difficult. And I know too, that when that happens, sometimes people think about suicide. And I'm wondering if that's something that's been going on with you. And I care about you and I'm here for you and I want to understand where you're coming from. And then whatever we hear, it's not about fixing or correcting it. It's not about saying, but you have so much to live for. Or in a few years, this isn't going to matter. Because right now is what matters. and how I feel right now is my reality. What it is when whatever we hear is that we offer some validation. It doesn't mean we have to agree. It just means I hear you. I hear you. I'm so sorry you're hurting. I'm so sorry this is such a hard time for you. And again, reiterating support. I'm here for you. How can I help you? How can I be a support to you? What can I do for you right now? Or what else can you share with me? I'm here. I'm an ear.
I think you're sharing. It feels like just a normal conversation. As I'm sitting here listening to this, it feels like a really hard conversation to have. How can one become more comfortable with what could be a very uncomfortable conversation? What can you do to make yourself either more courageous or more open to actually having this conversation?
So I'm going to say that in two ways. The first way is don't ever expect this to come easy. I have conversations like this with clients all the time and with family. And no matter how many conversations you have about someone struggling, it's never going to be easy because it's not an easy thing to experience. So just know that it's okay to not know what the answer is. It's oftentimes we struggle because we don't want to make it worse, right? I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing. And then that's what promotes people not doing it at all. That's where that's coming from. It's coming from a place of care and concern. I care about this person. I want to be a support. I don't want to do the wrong thing. It's not an easy conversation for the other person who you're talking to, and that's okay. That's why there are supports available. Now, as far as being more comfortable with this conversation, there are free trainings that people can do. There's something called QPR, which is question, persuade, refer. And you can look in your area for free QPR trainings. But basically QPR is like CPR, but for mental health. So it's a 1-hour training designed for any community member to just better understand, recognize warning signs of suicide, and to better understand what to say and what to do in response to it. Our nonprofit actually hosts a QPR training every year. Ours are in person. We have one coming up in Chandler next month. But you can find a lot of organizations that offer QPR trainings. So that would be another way to kind of help. But again, it's never going to be like, oh, this is easy conversation, because it's not.
Flipping to the person that's going through this now, you mentioned they may not be able to ask for help because they don't want to feel like a burden. What are some of the ways that this individual can also broach the subject with people that they care about or seek resources to help?
So as far as the person is struggling, that if they want to reach out to someone, one of the things I often talk about with the youth that I work with, but really this applies to all ages, is who is your trusted adult? Who's your trusted person? So we need to think about, who are we communicating this to? If I'm struggling, I need to make sure that the person I'm reaching out to is someone who's going to pause and listen and offer me the validation and support that I need, who's going to stay on the line or going to stay with me until we figure out what to do. So we need to think about that. And I encourage people to think about that ahead of time. You know, who's your people? We have different people in our lives have different purposes. Some of our people are just really great to hang out with. Some people are great to watch a movie with. Some people make you laugh. And some people are going to absolutely drop everything else and be there for you when you're struggling. So know who those people are ahead of time, and even communicating that to your people ahead of time. You know, like, hey, I was watching this podcast and I realize you're my person. I just want to let you know that. I've heard different numbers, but the idea is that it only takes 6 or 7 minutes to have a meaningful conversation with someone to show support. So the idea is that if you can reach out to someone and drop 7 minutes of time just to say, yeah, you know, this is a rough day. It may not be a suicide crisis, right? But it's just having a rough day. And I just need someone. It only takes 6, 7 minutes to feel that difference. And so my best friend and I, we will text the other person saying, I need 6 minutes. And we know exactly what that other person needs. And we know we're going to drop, and it's just 6 minutes. Anyone can give that. So it's, you know, kind of building who your supports are and recognizing that ahead of time. If you're struggling in the right now, making sure that you are reaching out to someone and be direct about it. Because if again, the person who's on the receiving end may not realize what I'm saying, oh, it's a rough day. Like, they're like, yeah, I know what you mean. It's really rough. You know, like they don't know that that's your call for help. And we have to be as direct as we can be, even when it feels uncomfortable again. And I need help. I need to talk to you. I need someone right now. And if we don't have that person, or we don't get that, we're not sure we're going to get that response. That's why crisis lines exist as well. And there's the crisis lines, millions of calls a year. Why? Because people need them. That's why they exist. And the thing that a lot of people don't know about crisis lines, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, you don't have to be in crisis to call them. People say 988 is like 911. It's not. 911 is, you don't call unless you're in an emergency. 988, you can call. You can call and say, I'm struggling, or my friend is struggling, or my so and so that I know I don't know how to be a support to them, or I need some resources, or I'm having scary thoughts and I don't know what to do with them. You can call them anytime, and that's what they're there for.
Dr. McCall, how long does this process normally take? Is this one of constant vigilance? How should one look and observe the friend or the group of friends that are going through this? How often should these conversations take place?
So I think it's important to have a pulse on our closest people in general. So having opportunities when, bringing up conversations when opportunities arise. With parents, I'll talk about building in opportunities for conversation so that even if our kids don't take it up on it, we're still showing that we're willing to have conversations. So even things like watching this podcast, right? Okay, well, now I'm going to connect with at least two people in my life. It might be children, it might be parents, it might be family or friends, whatever. I'm going to connect with two people today and say, hey, I just watched this podcast about suicide prevention, and it made me realize how important it is for me to connect with the people I really care about. And I just wanted to reach out to you and say, how are you doing? And that you know that I'm here for you. And that in itself, we need to have those kinds of interactions often. We need to have those opportunities. When we see something in the news or we see something on social media, we can use that as a turning point to say, what was your reaction to that? Or I'm having a hard time with this. Let's talk about it. What we need to know about suicidal ideation and suicidal thinking is that it fluctuates quite dramatically, even over very, very short, like 30 minutes. Meaning that someone is feeling suicidal at one point and an hour later is not feeling that way. And then an hour later they might. And that can be kind of scary, but it also gives a lot of room for intervention. And it also speaks a lot to how much power we have in reaching out and connecting with people. That just in that 6 minutes or just in that 20-minute phone call, like that could make a total difference in what happens next to someone. So we have so many powerful opportunities for intervention. So I say have the conversations. And one of the things that we can do best too is modeling with ourselves. If someone asks me, how am I doing? I might say, well, it's been kind of a rough day and I'm feeling kind of depressed and anxious today. And I might not tell that to the stranger who holds the door open for me, but I might tell that to the person, my trusted colleague or a friend who reaches out to me, who's going to say, well, tell me more about it. I can give you a few minutes. And we can model the power of that impact.
I love the normalization of this approach. It just feels so conversational. It feels so everyday, but it's such a powerful subject that it's important to make time for it. And then you've left someone so much better because you had the bravery to have that conversation. Could you talk about the role of community in building that resilience?
The big piece with community is that we need to be a community and we need to encourage, we need to build opportunities for our community to be understanding and to be able to connect in a positive and resilient way. That can take so many forms. What is community? My community is my friend network. That's my community. My community is my family. That's my community. And then we can look broader into other aspects. I always encourage people to use your voice in a powerful way in community. If you're in, as far as actual community goes, where you feel like there needs to be more conversations, go to a school board meeting, go to a city meeting and share those thoughts. Reach out to people who are leaders and who have opportunity to share resources and to bring things to the forefront. It's amazing what people can do when they bring it forward. Semicolon Society was birthed in a period of huge grassroots movement after our community lost multiple youth over a short period of time. People were scared and upset and wanting something to change, and we were one of multiple organizations that came forward in that point to say something has to change, and things changed. And so it's just bringing in those opportunities. It's very powerful what one person can do. And, and even coming down to things like something is portrayed in an off way on media. Reach out to the reporter and say, hey, I don't think that this was done in a very responsible way. Or you're at an event and, someone is having an emotional reaction to a conversation. Go to that person and say, how can I be a support to you? And that's also a model to the community around you. There's so many things that we can do to help, inspire change.
Are there any other things that you would like our audience to know about this very important topic?
It's just important to continue having the conversation and to just remember that everyone experiences depression, anxiety to some extent, and everyone has stories to share, and yet we oddly keep them all to ourselves because we think no one else has stories to share. but that everyone has struggles, and that it's so important just to recognize those kinds of pieces when even if you're not having conversations about suicide, you can make a huge difference in how we treat each other. So by holding the door open for someone, by, not giving that person a negative reaction because they gave you the wrong change or something like that, or they got your coffee order wrong, instead giving them grace and patience. Noticing when you notice that person who has that fantastic hat. Wow, I would wear something like that. Tell them that. Say hello to someone. Show people that you care. Reach out to someone who you care about and just say, hey, I was thinking about you today. Those things make a huge difference, and that builds our resiliency. Really, suicide prevention is all about building connection and resiliency, knowing that we can get through tough times. And how do we do that? By connecting with each other and knowing that we have supports that we can access.
Beautifully said, Dr. McCall. Thank you. Folks, this has been absolutely incredible. I feel really inspired by this because it goes back to how destigmatizing some of these conversations need to be so that we can actually have them with openness and sincerity. Thank you so much for the time today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I answer those personally or will forward them to Dr. McCall as the case may be, and we'll also leave these resources in the show notes. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with other people. You'll see links on the screen to our stories playlist, and you'll see another video that you might enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.